Hello viewers, I'm Daniel Kasahun with this edition of Addis Dialogue broadcasting to you on ETV language. In this edition, we discuss some issues with regard to the Nile Basin, why it has become a bone of contention between the riparian countries, particularly between Ethiopia and Egypt. We learn scholarly views about the Nile Basin from Mr. Dariun Abebe. He is a diplomat from the Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
We have the 1929 agreement between the United Kingdom and Egypt in the Nile Basin. And also we have the 1959 agreement between Egypt and Sudan on the water sharing agreement. How did you find this agreement? Was it fair, neglecting the other riparian countries and making that agreement?
Thank you, Daniel. A very interesting question, actually. The 1929 exchange of notes between the United Kingdom and Egypt, I think we can refer it as an exchange of notes between the United Kingdom and the United Kingdom, rather than saying kind of agreement entered between two sovereign and independent nations. We can say that, actually. The reason being, at that time, the United Kingdom has its heavy influence in Egypt. Egypt was believed to be independent in 1922, but we have the heavy hand from the United Kingdom at that time, and scholars say Egypt was not independent until 1952. So the Great Britain entered into that agreement to make sure the uninterrupted flow of the Nile reaching Egypt, because Egypt at that time was the source of raw material for the United Kingdom, especially cotton for its textile factories in Manchester. Therefore, the United Kingdom was trying to make sure that its colonies in the water source countries in the upstream of the Nile are not engaged themselves in any kind of activity that decreases the flow of the Nile reaching Egypt. So it is an agreement entered between two, not two sovereign countries, but one country. That's how we see it. And whether it was fair or unfair, it was unfair.
Which one is the Egyptians referring their historical right?
Historical rights, that is non-existent, actually. In international law, it doesn't exist. And the Egyptians claim that they have historic right over the Nile. If that's the case, the Ethiopians and other upstream countries have natural right, which is much bigger, much broader, and much sound than the so-called historic rights. We have a natural right. The river is flowing through my door, and I have each and every right to utilize. So the so-called historic right is non-existent, as I said. For Egypt, what they call a historic right is based on the 1929 exchange of notes and the 1959 agreement, and that is colonial based. And it is saddening, to be honest, a sovereign and independent country like Egypt, and with its history and civilization leaning on a colonial treaty, rather than looking at eye to eye with its African brothers and sisters in the upstream and entered into very sound and formidable and very really reliable agreement like the Cooperative Framework Agreement. And unfortunately, the Egyptians are tying themselves, and if you look at their constitution under Article 44, they have what they call is their historic right on the Nile. That's laughable. And the constitution obliged the government to protect the Nile and to protect Egypt's historic right on the Nile. And that is really, really saddening. Not for us, but for the Egyptians themselves.
Do you see any possibility among the Egyptians to revisit their constitution and rewrite it?
It is up to the Egyptians to be self-reflective and to look into inside and to live up to the 21st century. The so-called historic right, as I said, is something just as if that country is leaning on colonial agreement, and that's not helpful. That's not a civilized way of dealing with differences with neighbors. You can't say this water is mine while there are other 9 riparian countries or 10 riparian countries who are sharing it. Egypt contributes 0% to the flow of the Nile. And Egypt wants us to, maintain a historic wrong that its leaders entered into in the 1920s and in the 1950s. By the way, in the 1950s, Emperor Haile Selassie tried to approach Gamal Abdel Nasser, and he was saying, let us enter into agreement together as brothers and sisters in the Nile. And Gamal Abdel Nasser declined the request of His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie. That's a lost opportunity for the Nile Basin and a lost opportunity for Egypt. For Ethiopia, it's okay, we're fine. Because no agreement entered between any country, whether it's a colonial power or African country like Egypt, is not prohibiting us from utilizing our water resources. And that's a historic wrong. And I hope with time and knowing, a lot of things are changing on the ground. Ethiopia has built many dams in the Nile Basin, like the Takazid, the Tanabeles, the Fincha, the Koga, and now the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and other projects are on the pipeline. So knowing this fact and knowing cooperation is in their best interest, I hope the Egyptians will come to their senses and live up to the 21st century and, throw away what they call is a historic right and enter into modern international water law, and which is based on equitable and reasonable utilization, no significant harm, and cooperation. And negotiating in good faith is really important. And we have actually a negotiated outcome, and that's the cooperative framework.
And for sure, their claim of historic right is against the international water law.
Yeah.
How do you express their claim with the international courts?
Yeah, these two are, just on two opposite sides. Egypt, I have said it before, Egypt is trying to sail against the wind. They're trying to sail that way, and they are trying to sail against the storm, and that is very difficult. Modern international law is for cooperation, for equitable and reasonable utilization, and for no significant harm, and for resolving differences or disputes or disagreements based on negotiations in good faith. That's the most important thing.
In the Nile Basin, we find, I think, around 11 countries in the course of the Nile Basin. They are determined to cooperate for equitable utilization of the Nile water under the framework of the Cooperative Framework Agreement. Many countries have signed it and ratified it. Egypt and Sudan, they're against. Still now, they haven't signed it. They don't want to ratify it. Particularly, let's say, in connection to Egypt. What if Egypt persists in denying all these factors? What will be the outcome in the coming years?
Well, if you look at the Cooperative Framework Agreement, I said it was negotiated by all the basin countries. Eritrea was an observer, of course, and South Sudan was not independent at that time. South Sudan achieved its independence in 2011. All the countries, all the 9 countries negotiated the Cooperative Framework Agreement, including Egypt. And actually, the vote of thanks, while the negotiation was concluded in 2007, the first phase, it was the then Minister of Water and Irrigation, Mohammed Abu Zaid, who gave the vote of thanks in Entebbe. He acclaimed and thanked the negotiating team of the Nile Basin countries and appreciated the work done. But only one sub-article was the difference. If you look at the Cooperative Framework Agreement, it is all about the management, the cooperative management and utilization of the Nile waters. It is for cooperation. And it clearly states is each and every riparian country of the Nile had the right to utilize the waters of the Nile in its territory, in its jurisdiction, in an equitable and reasonable manner. But while doing so, they must make sure that they are not causing significant harm. The only way to make sure that the utilization of the river by one particular country is not causing significant harm is when you ensure the equitable and reasonable utilization of the river. That's most important. That's the cornerstone.
Let's come to the commencement of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. I think it was in 2011.
Yes.
Can we say it as a game changer in the Nile Basin?
Yes. It is indeed. Actually, the construction was commenced in 2010, and the contract was the official commencement of the construction of the dam on the 2nd of April 2011. But if you look at the contract signed between the government of Ethiopia and Salini Impregilio, which is the main contractor of the dam, it was commenced in 2010. The GERD is a game changer, yes. And it is, Ethiopia conceived the construction of dams in the Blue Nile long ago. It was in 1925, actually.
During the reign of Emperor Haile Selassie.
Emperor Haile Selassie. Yeah. When Haile Selassie first commissioned a study in cooperation with the United States Bureau of Reclamation. And 32 projects were identified in the Blue Nile Basin only, not in the Takeze, not including the Barawakobo, which is in the Nile system, only in the Abai Gorge, only in the Abai Basin. And 32 projects were planned and identified. And one of the projects identified at that time was the border dam, now what we call is the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. And there are also other 3 projects behind this dam, actually. And for long it was only Fincha. It was implemented out of the 32 projects. And the GERD was commenced, and it's a game changer for many reasons. One, it is the biggest dam in the Nile Basin, as I said, and it will produce a huge amount of energy, like more than 15,000 gigawatt hour per year, which is huge, and it will help us to electrify our country. By now we have more than 65 million people without access to electricity. We'll change that. Second, it is very important for the region, apart from benefiting Ethiopia. Beyond benefiting Ethiopia and Ethiopians, it is implication and its significance is to the region and to the world, actually. How? First, it will serve the region by facilitating energy-led integration. That's really important. Our grids are interconnected with Sudan, with Djibouti, with Kenya now, and now with South Sudan it will be commenced soon, and we are also in discussion with Tanzania, Rwanda, and Uganda. So it will provide affordable energy and it will facilitate regional integration. Third, it will also provide more water. Having another dam in the system means having more water. You will save water. It is like a water bank, and it will serve downstream countries during drought as well. And another most important benefit is it will uplift the energy in Sudan. Sudan will get, without adding a single turbine, without building any dam, just by maintaining and increasing the efficiency of their dams, Sudan can get the energy that we are getting from the Takezi Dam without, paying a penny. It will not cost them anything, but the GERD will make the flow of the river, the Nile, regular, and then they will secure that. Another one, it will expand irrigation downstream for sure, especially in Sudan and in Egypt, and it will avoid also siltation. This is the most important thing.
Referring the issues around the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, can we say the dam is economical or in connection to the issues, political?
We can say, such kind of projects have different significance. And if you look at the Nile, for instance, the Nile River is a matter of life and death for Ethiopia. And Ethiopia do not deny that it's also a matter of life and death for Sudan, for Egypt, and for other upstream countries as well. It's a source of livelihood. So Ethiopia sees the grand Ethiopian and South Sudan from such a perspective. For us, it is a matter of survival. I was mentioning earlier, we have more than 65 million people without electricity. And we have millions of youth without jobs. And the only resource that we have is water and land. Now, this dam is for power generation. This is only because there is not that much land that we are going to irrigate downstream of the dam. That's the only reason. But we have each and every right to utilize our water resource for any purpose, consumptive or non-consumptive, for hydropower, domestic, industry, or irrigation. So we see the Nile as a project from such a perspective. I cannot say it is either political or economic. It's a matter of survival. For Ethiopia, the Nile is indispensable. If you look at the figures, like 70% of the water is in the Nile basin in Ethiopia. And you have almost 45 million people directly depending on the river. But if you look at Ethiopia, and 6 regional states are in the Nile basin. And these are the biggest regions, by the way. Like the Amhara, the Oromo, the Tigray, the southern nations, in Gambela, in Benshangul. Now, if you look at the population of these 6 regional states, you have more than 95% of the population. And if you look at the indirect dependence on the river, it is almost the entire population. It's more than 108 million population. Because our access to electricity depends on our hydropowers. And of the 45,000 megawatts of hydroelectric potential that we have as a country, 30,000 is in the Abai Gorge, in the Blue Nile system. And of the 3.7 million hectares of land that we can irrigate, nearly 2.4 million hectares is in the Nile basin. This clearly tells you how much the Nile is indispensable for Ethiopia. It's not a political project, it's not an economic project, it is just a matter of survival. It is an existential matter for Ethiopia.
But it remains, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, it has remained to be a bone of contention for long, and it's continuing. Debates are here and there, arguments are here and there. And let's come to 2015, when the 3 countries, Ethiopia, the Sudan, and Egypt, signed a declaration of principles. I think that was a remarkable turning point among the 3 countries to resolve debatable issues and move forward. But we don't see it being practical. Why do you think that they failed to implement what they have signed?
Thank you, Daniel. I don't think the Gerd will be contentious, and unless the countries and the politicians allow it to be. And at this time, it is Egypt which is making it contentious. From the Ethiopian perspective, we do not have any problem. We know what should be the focus of the 3 countries. The focus of the 3 countries must be on the first filling and the annual operation of the Gerd. How we are to fill it, at what rate, in how many years, and how much water we are going to save, how much water we are going to release downstream. These are the issues. It's very technical. If you make things political, then it will be contentious, yes. But it is purely technical. You have numbers, you have the hydrology, you have the meteorology. You look at science. If you depend your arguments and decisions on science, then you have the solution. But if science is politicized, and if things are escalated into a political matter and a security matter, and trying to say, oh, the water is mine and you are not going to drink from this water, then it will be a source of contention. Then it will be a source of conflict. But for Ethiopia, the Gerd in the Nile, any transboundary water, is a means for cooperation. We are clear on this. And that's why we entered into an agreement on the Declaration of Principles that you mentioned in 2015. There are marvelous principles. We have 10 principles in the agreement on the Declaration of Principles, like principle of cooperation, which clearly states the Nile is a source of livelihood for the three countries. Therefore, they shall cooperate in good spirit. Sense of cooperation is important. And you have the issue of sustainability and why the Gerd is important and how it's going to contribute for the economic development of the countries through energy generation. And you have the third principle, no significant harm, which is one of the cardinal principles of international water law. You have the fourth principle, which is another most important in cornerstone of international water law, and that's equitable and reasonable utilization. And the fifth principle is on the first filling and annual operation of the Gerd, which is very important, which I will come back to. And you have the sixth principle on confidence building. Ethiopia says it will contribute to the regional integration and economic development of the countries, and Ethiopia clearly states its willingness to give priority of electric purchase to Egypt and Sudan. That's the most important thing. And you have the 7th article on information and data exchange. You have the 8th principle on dam safety, which Ethiopia is appreciated for. And you have the 9th principle on territorial sovereignty and integrity and equality of states. And you have the 10th principle, which is also another most important point, on peaceful resolution of disputes. This is really important. Now, Ethiopia for long, it has always been committed to the agreement on the Declaration of Principles because it serves the interests of the three countries. By signing the agreement on the Declaration of Principles, Egypt renounced the 1959 agreement, because the 1959 agreement, as we discussed earlier, is based on unfounded doctrines like historic rights, which is not helpful. But the agreement on the Declaration of Principles is based on equitable and reasonable utilization in no significant harm and cooperation in good faith. This is really important. And if you look at Article 5, which is most important, the three countries agreed in good faith to use the outcome of a joint studies, which were supposed to be conducted, and to agree on the guidelines and rules on the first filling of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, and again the rules and guidelines of the annual operation of the dam.
But will it have any chance to be implemented? It was signed by
we are implementing it.
The leaders of the three countries.
Yeah, we are implementing it.
President al-Sisi is there in Egypt now, but the two leaders are not there.
It doesn't matter. It is the countries which enter into, it is the leaders of the three countries.
What if the current leaders change their mind?
It's up to the countries. If they change their mind, they change their mind. For instance, from the Ethiopian perspective, this is a general declaration of principles that we intend to facilitate our cooperation with Egypt and Sudan. And we hope the same is true for Egypt and Sudan. If they want to change their mind, it's up to them. For Ethiopia, we are okay. We are fine. If they don't want it, it's up to them. Because it will not stop me from filling my dam. It will not stop me from operating my dam once the impoundment is done. So that's the most important thing. And the agreement on the Declaration of Principles, or the DOP, is to serve the cooperation of the three countries. And we entered into this agreement in good faith, and we expect the same from the other side, especially from Egypt. And if good faith is lost, then
I think it's lost.
We have lost the good faith from the Egyptian side, yes, because they are still trying to impose their colonial yoke, and they are aspiring to make Ethiopia their hydrological colony, which is unacceptable, and that is what we call as the loss of the good spirit. Yes, you are right. But there is no any other way. There is no any other way to resolve the differences between the countries. The only way is cooperation. There is no any other means to resolve differences between these three countries. Because they are brothers and they are drinking from the same river and their blood is the same. So it is good for the three countries to finalize the process, and Ethiopia is determined to that.
But we see the CFA and the Declaration of Principles. They are there, but the issue is taken to another direction. Recently, it's taken to the United States. Was it right to take it to the United States, ignoring the CFA, ignoring the Declaration of Principles? Now the World Bank is involved and the United States from the very beginning, was it right to involve the World Bank and the United States in the common issue of the Nile riparian countries?
Thank you. A very interesting question, Daniel. But it was decided it is always good to explain our position because we knew that the Egyptians misinformed the Americans. And that's what exactly happened. Our minister, His Excellency Dialogue-Gerd, went to the United States with his friend, His Excellency Dr. Seleshi Bekele, our water minister, and they explained Ethiopia's position. And they found out that the President of the United States and the whole administration was misinformed. The Egyptians told the Americans that Ethiopia is constructing this dam for political purpose. One.
Do you say it was right for Ethiopians to join that group?
Going to the United States, we do not have any problem. It was a decision at the time. We felt right. But later on, we have found out some problems. Mm-hmm. But why it is right, let me explain. Mm-hmm. As I said, the administration, the White House, and other departments were misinformed, including the President. When the President heard that we are building this dam to feed our population, to elevate our population from abject poverty, and to give light to more than 65 million people without access to electricity, he was shocked. He was shocked. For an American president, just imagining there are people still without access to electricity, and in millions, 65 million. And the Egyptians also misinformed the administration that Ethiopia was, as if Ethiopia was diverting the Nile outside its course, drying it, and as if Ethiopia waged war on Egypt by drying up the Nile, by arresting the entire flow of the Nile, as if we are responsible. We cleared this. That's why it is really, really good to go. You clear their mind. You tell them your position. And we shouldn't shy away. If we have to face it, you face it. The most important thing is whether we are securing our national interest, whether we are protecting our national interest or not.
All right. It's eminent that the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Hydropower Dam will be completed to serve as destined plan.
Yeah.
What do you foresee after the completion of the scenario that you could see after the completion of this Grand Dam?
Ethiopia will not stop there. Ethiopia will not stop concluding the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and then sitting. No. We will continue other dams in the same river, in the same gorge. We have the Mabil, the Mandaya, the Bekoabo, the Kararobi, and of course we have other projects in the different tributaries of the Nile. And we have also other projects in the Tekezi, and we have also other projects in the Barwa Kobo. We'll go ahead with that. And for that reason, Ethiopia can go ahead with its national projects. But because Ethiopia's firm principle is cooperation, and the construction of the GERD will facilitate cooperation among the Bedouin countries. And I don't think from unilateralism Egypt will be the beneficiary. and it is only through cooperation in dialogue that the three countries can agree. And the GERD, as a game changer, will facilitate cooperation. Changing the whole region is one thing, but facilitating cooperation is the most important thing.
Well, dear viewers, that wraps up the program's edition of this dialogue from ATV Language. See you next time with yet another edition of the program. Goodbye.